Hello, friends, and welcome to Sleep Tight Stories. Every week, we celebrate our supporters through shoutouts and personal birthday messages. We think this is also a fun way for us to hear about all the amazing places that you, our listeners, come from. Happy belated birthday to Raleigh and Rip. We miss you and love you very much. From Isabella, Lenny, and baby Renee. Happy belated birthday to Indy on the Gold Coast, Australia, who turned 10 on July 7th. Your parents and sister Frankie love you so much and think you are a total rock star. Happy belated birthday to Zoe Allen in Orange Park, Florida on July 21st. Mommy loves you so much and truly enjoys the young lady you are becoming. Happy belated 9th birthday to Sadie from Buzzards Bay on July 23rd. Mama loves you whatever you say, +1. Happy belated 5th birthday to Seb in Halifax, Nova Scotia on July 26th. Love Mama, Dada, and Annie. They love you and are so proud of you every day. Happy belated birthday to Asa Wagner in Portland, who turned 5 on July 26th. From Mom, Dad, Charlie, Pepper, and Timber. They love you, little buddy. And happy belated 6th birthday to Emiliano on July 28th. From Isa, Mama, Dada, Sparkle, and Gummy. They love you and are so proud of you. Besos. Happy 4th birthday, Wyatt. And hello, Winnie Kate. Love Mom, Dad, Nina, and all of your cats. Happy birthday to Alistair Chin from Singapore, who is turning 5 on July 29th. Mommy, Daddy, and Melody love you very much and hope you have a wonderful birthday. Happy birthday to Zach Franco, who was turning 9 on July 30th, from your mommy, Yassie. Happy birthday to Isla from Westfield, Indiana, who is turning 7 on July 31st. Your mom, Kate, Dad, Kirk, and pups, Max and Finn, wish you a happy birthday. Happy birthday to Cora on July 31st. Love Mom, Dad, and Carter. Sweet girl, you shine inside and out, and they are so proud of you. Happy 7th birthday to Asha and Ada Davis on July 31st. Dad and Mom love you both so much. Never stop being your goofy, fun selves. Happy birthday to Colin from Georgia, who is turning 7 years old on August 1st. From Mom, Dad, and Winnie Woozles. They love you so much. Happy birthday to Peter in St. Louis, who is turning 5 on August 1st. With love from Gigi and Papa. Happy 6th birthday to Everly in Vero Beach, Florida on August 3rd. And congratulations on losing your first front tooth. Your smile is the coolest. Keep working hard in school and gymnastics and having lots of fun. Happy 6th birthday to Dawn E. from New York City on August 4th. Mommy, Daddy, Miriam, John, and Clarissa are so excited to celebrate you and can't wait to see all the fun things you do on this next trip around the earth. And happy birthday to Ivy in Chicago, who is turning 7 on August 4th. Also, good luck, Ivy, in starting lower elementary. Happy birthday to you all. Now, on to our story. Solomon Owl lives in a tree that everyone knows about. When Reddy Woodpecker decides he is going to play tricks on Solomon, things get out of hand. Solomon has to come up with a way to get some sleep and thinks hard about a solution. After he finds an answer, things are really good for Solomon until Farmer Green gets involved. The Tale of Solomon Owl Part 7. In the woods, there was hardly one of Solomon Owl's neighbors that couldn't point out the big hemlock tree where he lived. And mischievous fellows like Reddy Woodpecker sometimes annoyed Solomon a good deal by rapping loudly on his door. When he thrust his head angrily out of his house and blinked in the sunlight, his tormentors would skip away and laugh. They laughed because they knew that they had woken Solomon Owl. And they dodged out of his reach because he was always angry when anyone disturbed his rest in the daytime. Solomon Owl did not mind so very much as long as the trick was not played on him too often. But after a time, it became one of Reddy Woodpecker's favorite sports. Not only once, but several times a day did he go to the hemlock grove to hammer upon Solomon's hollow tree. And each time that he brought Solomon Owl to his door, Reddy Woodpecker laughed more loudly than ever before. Once, Solomon forgot to take off his nightcap. Though he wore it in the daytime, it really was a nightcap. And Reddy Woodpecker was so amused that he laughed at the top of his lungs. "What's the joke?" asked Solomon Owl in his deep, rumbling voice. He tried to look very serious, but it is hard to look any way except funny with a nightcap on one's head. As luck had it, Jasper Jay came hurrying up just then. He had heard Reddy Woodpecker's laughter, and if there was a joke, he wanted to enjoy it too. Jasper Jay, landing in a small hemlock near Reddy Woodpecker, asked the same question that Solomon Owl had just asked his rude caller. "What's the joke?" asked Jasper Jay. Reddy could not speak. He was rocking back and forth upon a limb, choking and gasping for breath. But he managed to point to the big tree where Solomon Owl lived. And when Jasper looked and saw Solomon's great, round, pale, questioning face, all tied up in a red nightcap, he began to laugh. These were no ordinary laughs. Those shrieks of Jasper Jay's. That blue-coated rascal was the noisiest of all the feathered folk in Pleasant Valley. And now he fairly made the woods echo with his hoarse cries. "This is the funniest sight I have ever seen," Jasper Jay said at last, to no one in particular. "I declare, there's a pair of them." At that, Reddy Woodpecker suddenly stopped laughing. "A pair of what?" he asked. "A pair of redheads, of course," Jasper Jay replied. "You've a red cap, and so has he." Jasper pointed at Solomon Owl, a very rude thing to do. Then two things happened all at once. Solomon Owl snatched off his red nightcap, which he had quite forgotten about, and Reddy Woodpecker dashed at Jasper Jay. He couldn't pull off his red cap, for it grew right on his head. "So that's what you're laughing at, is it?" he said angrily, and then nobody laughed anymore. That is, nobody but Solomon Owl. Solomon was so pleased by the argument that followed between Jasper Jay and Reddy Woodpecker that his deep, rumbling laughter could be heard for half an hour, even if it was midday. Wah, wah, hoo, wah. The sound reached the ears of Farmer Green, who was just crossing a neighboring field on his way home to dinner. "Well, well," he exclaimed, "I wonder what's happened to that old owl. Something must have tickled him, for I never heard an owl laugh in broad daylight before." After what happened when he came to his door without remembering to take off his red nightcap, Solomon Owl hoped that Reddy Woodpecker would stop teasing him. But it was not so. Having once viewed Solomon's red cap, Reddy Woodpecker wanted to see it some more. So he came again and again and knocked on Solomon's door. Solomon Owl, however, remembered each time to remove his nightcap before sticking his head out. And it might be said that neither of them was exactly pleased. For Reddy Woodpecker was disappointed, and Solomon Owl was angry. Not a day passed that Reddy Woodpecker didn't disturb Solomon's rest at least a dozen times. Perhaps if Solomon had just kept still inside his house, Reddy would have grown tired of bothering him. But Solomon Owl, for all he looked so wise, never thought of that. But he saw before too long that he would have to make a change of some sort if he wanted to enjoy a good, quiet sleep again. For a long time, Solomon Owl thought. It was a great puzzle to know just how to outwit Reddy Woodpecker. And Solomon almost gave up on finding a way out of the difficulty. But at last an idea came to him, all in a flash. He would take his daytime naps somewhere else. Solomon spent several nights looking for a good place to pass his days. And in the end, he decided on the meadow. It would be convenient, he thought, when he was hunting meadow mice at dawn, if he could just stay there without bothering to go into the woods to sleep. Since there were no trees in the meadow, but only a few scrubby bushes along the stone wall, one might naturally make the mistake of thinking that there could not possibly be a nook of any kind that would suit Solomon Owl, who could never sleep soundly unless his bedroom was quite dark. But there was one hiding place that Solomon liked almost as well as his home in the hollow hemlock, and that was Farmer Green's haystack. He burrowed into one side of it and made himself a snug chamber, which was as dark as a pocket and ever so much quieter. What pleased Solomon most, however, was this: nobody knew about that new sleeping place except himself. Even if Reddy Woodpecker should succeed in finding it, he never could disturb Solomon by drumming upon the haystack. If Reddy tried this trick, his bill would only sink noiselessly into the hay. So Solomon Owl at last had a good day's rest. And when he met Reddy Woodpecker just after sunset, Solomon was feeling so cheerful that he said, "Good evening," quite pleasantly, before he remembered that it was Reddy who had teased him so often. "Good evening," Reddy Woodpecker replied. He seemed very surprised that Solomon Owl should be so agreeable. "Can you hear me?" Reddy asked him. "Perfectly," said Solomon. "That's strange," Reddy Woodpecker exclaimed. "I was almost sure you had suddenly grown deaf." And he could not understand why Solomon Owl laughed loud and long. "Wah, wah, hoo-wah!" Solomon's deep voice's laughter rolled and echoed through the woodland. But Reddy Woodpecker did not laugh at all. Reddy Woodpecker had a very good reason for not laughing when he met Solomon Owl. Of course, he knew nothing of Solomon's new hiding place in the haystack. And that very morning, Reddy had invited a party of friends to go with him to the hemlock grove, where Solomon Owl had always lived, to have some fun, as Reddy had explained. For a long time, he had knocked and hammered and pounded at Solomon Owl's door. But for once, Solomon's great pale face did not appear. "Where's the fun?" Reddy's friends had wanted to know after they had waited until they were impatient. And Reddy Woodpecker could only shake his head and say, "I don't understand. It's never happened like this before. I'm afraid Solomon Owl has lost his hearing." Reddy Woodpecker's friends were no more polite than he was, and they began to tease him. "You didn't hammer loud enough," one of them told him. So he set to work again and rapped until his head felt as if it would fly off and his neck began to ache. Still, Solomon Owl did not appear, and the party broke up into something very like an argument. For Reddy Woodpecker lost his temper when his friends teased him, and a good many not-so-nice remarks passed back and forth. Somehow, Reddy felt that it was all Solomon Owl's fault because he hadn't come to the door. Of course, Reddy had no way of knowing that all the time Solomon Owl was sleeping peacefully in Farmer Green's haystack in the meadow, a quarter of a mile away. It was a good joke on Reddy Woodpecker, and though no one had told Solomon Owl about it, he was not unable to guess at least a little of what had happened. Solomon Owl continued to have a very pleasant time living in the meadow. Since there were many mice right close at hand, little by little he visited the woods less and less. And there came a time at last when he hardly left the meadow at all. Not flying any more than he could help and eating too much, and sleeping very soundly each day, he grew rounder than ever, until his friends hardly knew him when they saw him. "Solomon Owl is a sight. He's grown so big," people began to say. But his size never worried Solomon Owl in the least. When he became too big for his doorway in the haystack, it was a simple matter to make the opening larger, much simpler than it would have been to make himself smaller. And that was another reason why he was delighted with his new home. At last, however, something happened to put an end to his lazy way of living. One day, the sound of men's voices awakened him when he was having a good nap in the haystack, and he felt his bedroom quiver as if an earthquake had shaken it. Scrambling to his doorway and peering slyly out, Solomon saw a sight that made him very angry. A wagon stood alongside the haystack, and on it stood Farmer Green and his hired man. Each had a pitchfork in their hands, with which he tore great forkfuls of hay off the stack and piled it upon the wagon. Solomon Owl knew then that his fine hiding place was going to be spoiled. As soon as the horses had pulled the load of hay away, with Farmer Green and the hired man riding on top of it, Solomon Owl crept out of his snug bedroom and hurried off to the woods. He was so fat that it was several days before he could squeeze inside his old home in the hollow hemlock. And for the time being, he had to sit on a limb and sleep in the daylight as best he could. But to his surprise, Reddy Woodpecker troubled him no more. Reddy had drummed so hard on Solomon's door in the effort to wake him when he wasn't there, that Aunt Polly Woodchuck told him he would ruin his bill if he didn't watch out. And since the warning thoroughly alarmed him, Reddy stopped visiting the hemlock grove. In time, Solomon Owl grew to look like himself again, and people never really knew just what had happened to him. but they noticed that he always hooted angrily whenever anybody mentioned Farmer Green's name. And that is the end of our story. Good night. Sleep tight.